my fellow wizards, Spring Test Realm is out and there are so many crazy changes to talk about, but let me just say there are a bunch of updates in here that players have been asking for the longest time, and I think the quality of life changes are just fantastic. So let's dive in. First, you may have noticed a new addition to the fairgrounds that KI has been teasing for a bit. It's the Portal of Peril, which is essentially a new event that allows players to play through previous gauntlets and get both traditional and brand new rewards by participating. By heading to the sigil, you can collect 3 credits or portal passes per day, and each credit is good for 1 run through the gauntlet of the week, so 3 runs total per day or 21 total for the week. At present, the gauntlet is Sinbad and the Iron Sultan, but this will change over time. You can enter at the sigil itself or through the team up kiosk, which allows you to more easily find groups, which is a nice feature. There are 3 level tiers for the gauntlets, level 50, 100, and 150, and players will be scaled up to the next tier based on the highest level player in the group. So if the strongest level player is level 80, everyone will be scaled up to the level 100 tier. If you happen to be a lower level, you'll be scaled up to match the higher level players, but you won't be given any new higher level spells, so you need to make sure you're prepared to help with the spells you currently have. When running the gauntlets, you'll be able to get the original rewards from the gauntlets, earn points in the event battle pass in exchange for rewards, and also turn in fortune coins to the NPC Madame Magda in exchange for stuff like golden skeleton keys, Azoth, and other treasure cards, but it looks like more rewards may become available as well. It looks like, based on the wording, that this may be a monthly event, sort of like Beastmoon Hunt or Decathlon, but it would be great if there was a new gauntlet available every single week. Either way, I think this is a fantastic change that allows players access to old gauntlets that they would otherwise have to pay $40 to own or find a friend whose gauntlet they can use. There are so many players who likely never had the opportunity to experience these gauntlets who now can for free, which is amazing. It also helps with the inaccessibility of important reagents like Elemental and Spiritual Retriever, which were previously gatekept behind certain gauntlets and are needed to unlock pet talents that help with finding Spellements to upgrade spells, which I've discussed in more detail in another video. The only real issue I see here is if like a level 10 player and a level 170 player try to team up, the level 10 player stats may be scaled up with them, but they won't have any like actually useful spells to contribute to the battle, so they're essentially dead weight, but hopefully people will find groups that work for them anyway. I personally would love to see more info added to Team Up in a future update where players can see the level as well as the school of other players in Team Up to solve this kind of issue, but for now, the Portal of Peril is absolutely a step in the right direction towards accessibility for all players, and I'm really excited to see it bring life back into some old retired gauntlets. Speaking of gauntlets, there's also a brand new standard gauntlet called the Forbidden Library. In Test Realm, you can buy the recipe from Lloyd Fallingwater in the shopping district and get the reagents needed to craft it from Hephaestus in the commons, so once the update goes to Live Realm, you'll likely need to either buy the gauntlet as a bundle or earn the reagents needed to craft it by buying the affiliated Horde pack, which will have a chance to drop the reagents you need. It'll be interesting to see how quickly new gauntlets like this will be introduced to the rotation for Portal of Peril, or if players will need to wait a while first if they don't want to buy the bundle. As for the gauntlet itself, I love the Forbidden Library setting and atmosphere. The library is hidden somewhere in Aquila, and a nasty bibliomancer has entered to steal its deepest secrets for himself, so it's our job to catch up to him by solving puzzles and battling our way through the library's defenses before it's too late. This gauntlet feels like quintessential Wizard101 to me, and I couldn't be happier with it. I love the walls of dusty scrolls, the dim, mysterious lighting, and the callback to Aquila, which most max level wizards haven't thought about in quite a long time. In an added twist, there are different puzzle rooms that are randomly selected when entering the gauntlet, so each time you enter you'll be facing a different combination of puzzles and enemies, making each run feel fresh and exciting. Heads up that it appears some of the puzzles will require basic cantrips like Magic Touch to solve, so make sure you enter with some energy available. I personally got stuck on one such puzzle and never actually figured out the solution, so there was definitely some challenge to these, or I'm just clueless, but it is cool that the dungeon will be a bit different each time, and this encourages players to run it multiple times just to see what new puzzles and fights appear. I think people will really enjoy this one when it comes to live. Players have been asking for an in-game mail system for years, and now we're finally getting one in the form of Pixie Post. You can now select a friend in your friends list and click the Send Mail button in the Character Inspect window to send them a Pixie Post. You'll get a pop-up window which looks kind of like an email where you can write your message, add a subject line, and even choose a specific time for the Pixie Post to be sent to your friend. You then pay 250 gold to send your message. Similar rules to filtered chat apply to Pixie Post, with certain words not being allowed. These words will appear in red when typed. A nice quality of life feature is that you can copy and paste text into a Pixie Post if, for instance, you need to send the same message to multiple people in a group, though you are limited to 6 Pixie Post messages a day, so you can't go too crazy. You can also send Pixie Posts to anyone in a guild or adventure party by clicking on their name in the roster, which is also handy. If you want to look at Pixie Posts sent to you, you can check your messages in the social window under the new Pixie Post tab. Messages there will expire after 10 days, and you can delete or reply to Pixie Posts there. You can also choose to ignore players who sent you a message if they sent you something mean or you don't want to be friends anymore. Along the same lines, there's also a report button if someone sent you something inappropriate. Also, in the social window is another new feature called Quest Friend Finder, which is under the Friendly Players tab. To use Quest Friend Finder, you must actively be a friendly player, and essentially, when you press the Quest Friend Finder button, the game will ask other friendly players if they would like to join you for questing. If they say yes, you'll be added to a group with them, and they'll teleport to you. The one downside is that Quest Friend Finder doesn't necessarily find a friend that is on the exact same quest with you, although you should be fairly close level-wise, so whoever is further ahead in quests may have to help the wizard who is behind to finish their earlier quests first before you can quest together. Most people would like to just immediately be at the same progress level quest-wise, so I could see this potentially being frustrating, but at least it does encourage players to help each other. You can turn Quest Friend Finder off by hitting the button again. If you're actively a friendly player, you will occasionally be asked to join other wizards for questing, so you will then get several options to choose from, including yes, and you'll be teleported to the player and join their group, or no, ask tomorrow, and you won't be asked again for 24 hours. The quest window also times out after 30 seconds, and if you close the quest request window, you won't be asked again for 6 hours. Honestly, Spellcard Inspect has been needed for such a long time, so I'm pumped that it's finally here. Now, in spell menus outside of combat, you can control left click or right click on a card to open the Spell Inspect menu. It'll initially show you the regular description from the card, hieroglyphics and all, but don't worry. From here, you can then mouse over different card symbols to get a far more detailed description of what each symbol means, with the idea being that over time, you'll have an easier time learning the original symbols and what they mean, so you won't need the additional descriptions as much. The one downside is that this doesn't appear to work in an active fight, so you'll need to understand and remember what your cards do before entering a fight, which some players may struggle with for a bit. KA also plans to update older cards that were often inconsistent with their description so that everything will finally be standardized and easier to read. While I would like to be able to read a full description in a fight, this is still a fantastic quality of life update that I think many players will find useful, and it's been long overdue. All the badge collectors out there are finally getting rewarded for their efforts. Now, some badges will give special rewards like golden skeleton keys for completing them. By clicking on a relevant badge, you'll now see a pop-up where you can claim the reward or equip the badge. It looks like so far most of the rewards will come from badges for finishing all the world's quests or particularly difficult badges, but we'll see how many badges are added to the reward list over time. There's also a brand new badge category called Extra Credits, and these badges no longer count to your total badge completion, but can still be earned and equipped. These are mostly particularly difficult badges like the Undead Executioner for killing 20,000 undead enemies, or retired badges like the Promotions Associate for completing the Caramel pre-quest, which is now no longer available. This allows newer players not to be penalized for being unable to acquire old badges that just aren't feasible to get anymore, while allowing people who do have them to still equip them and show them off, which is a great compromise in my opinion. Badges will now also continue to count past the maximum total to earn the badge, so if you get Undead Executioner and then fight 30,000 undead, the badge will keep counting up your total, and you may even be able to get recurring rewards for going past the original total. There's also now a new option in the Player Inspect window when you click on someone that will let you see what badge they're wearing and a brief description of it. There's a new badge category that contains all the badges you've earned in the last day, as well as new button shortcuts in the various tome menus, which will automatically jump you over to the relevant badge category. Finally, there's a badge leaderboard at the NPC gold cap in the Arcanum where you can see a leaderboard for badges collected, and you can include or exclude extra credits badges in that count, as well as jump to your specific player to see where they fall on the leaderboard. Badges have needed an upgrade for a long time now, and these changes are simply fantastic. This adds so much more incentive to actually collect badges and even compete with others to see who can get the most, and now badge collectors can finally get the recognition and rewards they deserve. Arc 2 spells now finally have Spellements. Essentially, the 7-pip to 10-pip spells along with King Artorias have Spellements now and a traditional top and bottom path in the Spellements tab, with most divided along PvE and PvP lines like we've seen with previous spells. Just like other Spellements, players will be able to get them through pet retriever talents, cantrip chests, quest rewards, raids, and as drops from various bosses in Arc 2. The keynote here is that you can now farm those Arc 2 bosses for Spellements at any level, which is a huge departure from the Arc 1 Spellements, where if you progressed too far, you couldn't farm Arc 1 bosses for spells anymore. This is a great change and allows Spellement farming to be that much more accessible for players of all levels. Along those lines, we'll be able to farm for Spellements in both Arc 1 and Arc 2 due to a new feature called the Scales of Knowledge, which apply to specific dungeons where upon entering you can interact with the nearby Scales of Knowledge to gain a temporary level scaling effect that scales you to the equivalent dungeon. While level scaled, you will see your stats change, and you will only be able to use spells of the appropriate level for that dungeon. If you then defeat the boss before the effect runs out, which is right now about an hour, you'll then get the normally restricted Spellement drops. You can obviously still run the dungeons at your normal level, but you just won't get the Spellement drops then. Dungeons with Scales of Knowledge are available from Krakatopia through Chrysalis. While I admit I would like to just be able to run these dungeons at max level and just obliterate everything, this is a nice compromise and allows high-level players to still farm enemies for Spellements or even scale down to help their friends through a dungeon without totally dominating every fight. Based on my experience with the level scaling, a lot of these dungeons, especially Arc 1, are still very much soloable even with the scaling restrictions, which is nice. We've been asking for a way to farm old bosses for Spellements since Arc 1 Spellements came out, so this is definitely a step in the right direction. One minor complaint I do have is that right now there's no indication for what spells are or aren't allowed at different level scalings, and the game doesn't remove restricted spells from your deck, so you go into battle and the restricted spells in your deck just don't appear in the fight, leading to a lot of trial and error for what spells you can get away with using at different level scalings. I think once you use the Scales of Knowledge, there either needs to be a note somewhere that says what ranks of spells are allowed for each dungeon, or your spell deck itself should only show usable spells while the scaling effect is active. Otherwise, players are likely to go in with their max level spells, then find once it's too late that they can't actually use them in the fights. Arc 2 Spellements are now also cross-trainable, and PvP spells have been removed from professors and instead added to Diego outside the arena in Unicorn Way, which I think will help a lot with confusion from PvE players. This also means spells like Scarecrow are finally trainable for other schools. Rejoice, everyone! This is overall just a nice quality of life change and allows players to finally have certain spells they couldn't otherwise get, along with more clearly differentiating between PvE and PvP focused spells. There's a new Cosmetic Items tab in your backpack, which is where you'll now find your emotes, which were previously under the menu chat button, and you can now equip specific emotes as a victory dance instead of the normal standard options. You'll also find teleport effects here under a separate tab. You can also now equip and unequip them into specific gear sets, so you can mix and match teleports and emotes to specific stitches if you want. KI does say in the update notes that for right now this system is not finished and will not be added to Live Realm yet, but they're interested in testing it out. I definitely like the idea of adding emotes and teleports to gear sets, so hopefully they develop this idea more over time for a future update. Guilds are getting some upgrades this update, with the max player count increased to 60, museum appointments added to guild messages, and a new guild permission, Keymaster, added. Only the Keymasters can open raid gates and Museum Prima Magnus now. Guild cooldowns now start when you join a guild instead of when you leave, which is a very much needed quality of life update and should cut down on player frustration. Otherwise, various issues have been fixed with glitchiness related to items being picked up and essence totals, along with players now being able to create a guild at level 100 rather than the previous max level. Otherwise, for smaller changes, there's 2 new beastmoon forms, including the Ice Ninja Pig and Storm Cyclops, and a new beastmoon rewards schedule. In addition, several spells have been banned from advanced combat, including the top paths for a number of spells, along with many bottom paths now being changed, which you can see in more detail in the patch notes. In addition, monstrology has a brand new spell, Extract Equine, which will apply to horses, unicorns, zebras, and centaurs, which is a nice feature for animus collectors since they haven't had any updates in quite a while. Bottom path / PvP focused AoEs now also function a little differently and work similarly to divided damage spells like Iron Sultan, where you can select which targets you want to hit rather than automatically hitting everything. But note that this will not affect standard PvE AoEs in any way. For final thoughts on all this, I genuinely think this has been one of the better quality of life updates in a very long time. Players have been extremely frustrated with accessibility to Spellements and Gauntlets in particular for a very long time, and this update sets out to remedy a lot of those issues. Spell descriptions too have been increasingly difficult for newer players or PvE focused players to understand, so the new spell inspect feature goes a long way to help with that problem. Then there's just fun stuff like Pixie Post and the new Forbidden Library Gauntlet, and more features for social interaction and connection like the Quest Friend Finder. While not everyone is going to be totally happy with these changes, I think we can agree that KI is listening to player feedback and making some fantastic steps forward to addressing people's concerns, which is such a breath of fresh air. I'm genuinely so excited about so many of these features, and I hope the player base is too. Wiz desperately needed this, and I think we're finally headed down the right path. Alright, my fellow wizards, those are the major updates for Spring Test Realm. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I hope to see you out there in the spiral, and happy questing.